Motherfucker!
Fuck off! Fuck this! Fuck you! Fuck me! In a perfect fucking world, all these other women will be done! And maybe once they war, the rest of us could get along! No hold fucks! Religious cuts! Obnoxious kids!
Sweet. Alright, welcome. We are back. Meaningful Times with Friends. Episode 27. My goodness. And back once again is the incredible Jason the Art Lord, Spoolie D, and you might notice Nathan looks different. You know, the no politics has gotten to him so bad that he completely changed identities. This is a returning special guest. We have Andy Kettle, aka Mortville Andy, aka Andy Mortville, aka Mort. If you've watched the show, you might remember him from our finals of the Bads, from the Battle of the Bads, where he joined us. But we're doing something that we've never done, where unfortunately no politics Nate, due to politics, personal relations or whatnot, he is on leave with his wife in Southern California. So we do have some notes from him for our episode this week, and we have some wonderful images of his trip. He did some shooting, from what I understand. They went to a gun range. But we're trying to adhere to our schedule. We've been having a good kind of every 2 week schedule, and normally we just release these whenever. But in doing so, we decided to try and stay on schedule, and it was all good with no politics, Nathan. So he consented to having Andy being a substitute friend to fill in for him, and it gives Andy a chance to do a normal episode where we're not just consuming terrible music for an episode. So welcome, Andy.
Hi. It's great to be back on again. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back. I'm also on location right now, currently. So if you'll notice, I'm not trying to speak too loud because some people are still sleeping where I'm at, and I don't want to disturb them. So a couple of us are on location, as a matter of fact, here. We Spoolie D.
I'm 23 floors above the beautiful city of San Francisco.
That he loves, yes.
I love it so much. I'm sitting on top of it.
Right on. So,
ouch.
And the Art Lord is in the Art Lord's lair, where he normally is, so that's good. Correct, Jason?
That is right, yeah. I don't like to go anywhere, so.
All right, well, to kick it off, did we have any apologies this week?
I apologize in advance for not preparing better for this episode.
That's fine. That's plenty preparation for the show.
All right.
So I'm guessing no apologies, correct? All right. Well, it's time. No apologies, everybody. Another clean conscience week. So, well, kicking it off, our first topic is somewhat of a heavy topic because it was brought up in our chat due to the fact that no politics Nathan is not here. We decided to cycle it in because as much as this is not about the politics, it is always going to be relative to the politics. This was a topic brought forth by Spoolie D, and we know he has plenty to say on it. So we'll let Spoolie D take lead on this topic.
What's the topic again? Voting?
Yes.
I don't know. It was subtle. The background, takes me a little while to put two and two together. Yeah, so we're talking about this. When we grew up, it was during like kind of the first MTV push to like rock. I think it was Rock the Vote.
Rock the Vote.
And they were just like, you need to vote. And it's just like, it was very interesting because everyone's like, yeah, we need to vote. And it's really interesting because you're pushing that message on possibly the most uninformed voting sector, right? Because you're a kid, you don't really know anything. And then it occurred to me that I didn't know anything, so I just never registered to vote. And then, as time went on, I realized there's a couple factors. One, mathematically, it doesn't matter if I vote, right? Because we used to live in California. Didn't matter. The state always voted a certain way. And then just the more I learned about how politics is more professional wrestling and how inextricably corrupt and just weird it is. Because when you listen to politicians talk, they don't talk like normal people. And it's just people basically saying stuff that's not entirely true or not true at all and stuff they don't mean. And so I just kind of never got into it. The more you see, and I think it's maybe the last 20 years, maybe since George W. Bush, it seems like they're dropping all of the pretense that you have any sort of say in your government, at least at that level. And at this point, even this year, right, you have basically, no offense, basically someone who's clearly not the president as the president at this point, as was the case when Dick Cheney was our president. It's gone from like, I'm not informed enough to vote to like, it would almost be like an act of sheer absurdity and self-delusion if I did it at this point. But one of the things, I was visiting a friend in El Dorado Hills, and I parked on the street like any normal person, and I got a citation from his homeowners association. And it occurs to me, it's probably way more important that you get involved in your homeowners association or your your friend Bucci, getting involved in your local government, because like it doesn't matter who the president is, but like no president's going to stop some dickwad for giving me a homeowners association citation. It's not going to matter about how much your water bill is or all the stuff that, or how your buses run, how your local transit. And if you think about all the stuff that affects you, it's not the federal government for the most part, except for getting us into unnecessary wars over and over again and destroying our currency. But other than that, 99% of the stuff is your local government, probably not so much your state, but your state, your local, your county. And that's pretty much most of it. And the example I sent you guys was that Newsom, for some fucking weird reason, decided that he's just going to go like super Judge Dredd on all the homeless. What LA is like, no, we're not going to do that. And that's the beauty of that paradigm, is if you flip it entirely upside down when we're just getting inundated with information about the presidential election and things like that. And when the reality is, if you have like LA, if you have a city council and a government that's going to basically refuse to enforce the state or federal laws, like marijuana has been legal in California forever. I think it's still illegal in the federal government. It was at least up until this year, right? It doesn't matter. It's all the closest stuff to you. So I think I've just argued myself into maybe voting in local elections. Anyways, back to you, Dave.
All right. So yes, the topic is voting, which is kind of a broad topic, but I guess we'll go around and get our thoughts on just the act of voting. So let's start with the art lord, Jason. What are your thoughts on voting?
Okay, so I think the first presidential election I voted in, I don't remember the first one, but I do remember the last one I voted in for a long time was Gore and Bush. And I was incredibly disillusioned by the results of that election, to say the least. And so after that, I moved to San Francisco, and I didn't register to vote for years and years and years primarily because I didn't want to end up with jury duty. Because if you don't register to vote, you don't get called for jury duty.
Not true.
It was true in San Francisco at the time, because I didn't get called for jury duty until I registered to vote.
You got lucky. Not to start making this a war of words, but I've been called to jury duty as a San Francisco resident multiple times, and a San Mateo County resident. I've put on some displays you might have actually enjoyed, Jason.
I think it's the statuses with the DMV.
It's because Jason has a driver's license. I think
that's what I'm saying. The DMV. So
yeah,
I still don't have a driver's license, but I didn't. So I never got called to jury duty until I did register to vote. So basically, what I'm saying is, regardless of situation, it worked for me.
Spoolie D's situation.
Oh shit! Sorry. Anyway, in any case, I finally did register to vote again, because in addition to trying to avoid jury duty, I was just about as cynical as Spoolie D was. God damn it! Why you gotta have to fucking have a?
Because you want to know why? Because this is the most of a Spoolie D.
That's true. That's
discussion that he's been. So
it's for real.
Yeah.
So I was cynical. I was extremely cynical and felt like, it doesn't fucking matter if I vote or not. And then it was Obama's second run, when Obama got elected for the second time, that I did register to vote. I voted in that election, because when he got elected the first time, my partner was in tears, because it was, the first time in history that a black man had been elected president. I keep wanting to say arrested president. I don't know why. Elected president. So it was the first time. And so seeing him in tears, it made me realize that I was just being a stubborn asshole. So I registered so I could vote for his reelection, because I didn't want to be a person who didn't try to encourage that to happen, basically. And then I realized, when you talk about voting, everybody seems to leap immediately to the presidential elections. There's a lot more involved in voting than just electing a president, which, to be fair, it's almost pointless if I vote for who I vote for president in where I live, because where I live is going to vote Democrat probably regardless. There's a lot more to voting than voting for president. There's also, as was mentioned before, local elections and all of the different ballot measures and all that shit. So it is important to vote. You know, even if your vote for president doesn't matter, there's a lot more to vote for than just the president.
Is that Steve Martin that keeps popping up through Spooley's chest?
Yeah, it is a little distracting.
Yeah. Jesus.
Wait, we're going. This is a picture of our next president.
No doubt. Let's get Andy. Andy, what are your thoughts on voting?
I have never voted in a presidential election ever.
Whoa.
I registered as a Democrat to caucus for Bernie, and then when he didn't get the nomination, I didn't vote in that election because I couldn't bring myself to vote for Hillary. I am completely oblivious to local politics. I am a lazy American. I don't want to have the responsibility in my hand of making a bad decision, so I've just opted out. I don't feel as if my vote for president makes any difference because I live in a red state. It almost always votes Republican. So I'm also not convinced that our vote makes a difference when the last couple of elections have been disputed and taken out of the vote's hand, you know. So I know it's blasphemous to claim that one was mishandled and not the one before that, but tit for tat, you know, if you agree that there was monkeying around on the 2000 and whatever election, 2016, then you can say that there was monkeying around for 2020 also. But then people will say that, like, if you don't vote, you don't have a say, you can't complain about things. But I think not voting sends just as big a message as voting, and the biggest block of voters in America are the people who don't vote, you know. So I think it sends a message that people don't like the options that we have. I don't feel bad not doing it. So I should take a more active interest in what's going on around here in local elections, but I don't. So I'm just a lazy person. So
With that,
Well, even what you described as election rigging, right? So there was a huge groundswell for Bernie Sanders, and the DNC just straight up kneecapped him.
right.
Took him out of the picture. So your vote didn't matter. And then the next time it happened again in 2020, they all of a sudden, like every single one of them, except for Elizabeth Warren, for some reason, they all just dropped out at the same time and endorsed Joe Biden.
Even Tulsi did. She fought so hard against him, and then she ended up saying, "Yeah, he's our best option." You know,
Andy's a big fan of Tulsi.
I'm a big fan of Tulsi. Yes,
I like her hair.
I like her
He
feet.
likes more than her hair.
You like her feet?
Yeah, he likes her feet. Yeah.
All right, I definitely know what my next internet search is going to be after the show's over. And then the other thing, it's just interesting, right? Because then, Andy, this year, they wouldn't allow anyone to compete against Joe Biden. They basically told anyone you couldn't go to Iowa, no offense. You couldn't go to New Hampshire or you're going to lose like delegates. And so they rigged everything in South Carolina, which the Democrat Party is controlled by Jim Claiborne in South Carolina, for Joe Biden, right? And then now you still don't get to vote for his replacement. They just appointed Kamala Harris. So this is great. Like they've almost dropped all the pretense that you have any say in any of this. They just do not give a shit.
Right.
That's been a long time coming. I do know something he does vote for, and that's for CDs.
Oh yeah.
I am wearing the scene supporter. Be a scene supporter.
I vote for people to buy some fucking CDs from Mortville.
Everybody.
Yeah.
I'm going to read the minutes from Nate that we got. Even though No Politics Nathan is not here, we did get some statements on the topics from Nate and on the subject of voting. Here's from Nathan. Necessary, but probably useless. I love to be smug about it. I don't wear the I voted sticker. So those are his thoughts on.
I think he snuck in a haiku.
I think he did too. That he's a little non-poetry poetic motherfucker. Well, first off, when I was a kid, I remember being explained the electoral college. I mean, and this is in grade school, not even junior high. This was like fourth, fifth, or sixth grade. I remember it being explained whenever the election year was, what the electoral college was. And when it was explained, I remember just thinking like, oh, so that's how they decide. It's not necessarily through my vote per se. It's like they use the vote as sort of getting a group conscience of what the state is, and then they award the electoral votes that way. And when I kind of thought about it, I'm like, so then that doesn't make any sense, because you're saying that our vote counts, and then you're now telling me that it kind of doesn't in a way. It just depends on how the state goes. That was just my thoughts as a little kid. And ever since then, as I got older and was legally able to vote, I didn't necessarily vote. And he mentioned something, I forget what specifically it was. Oh, there was the fact that the largest block of voting Americans don't vote. And so I think what the elections really do at the federal level, what they do is this is where the wrestling comes into play, is that they're trying to ramp up the emotion and the stakes, all of that shit. So then it becomes more and more every year, like WrestleMania energy, to try and entice that non-voting block into voting.
Right.
And so that's really what they're trying to appeal to. I didn't particularly vote. What I did was I just gave my ballot to my mom. I was at my parents' house at the time, and I believe that was probably one of the W. Bush elections. It was either 2000 or 2004. So I would just hand off my ballot to my parents because my address was still listed with them, even when I didn't live at their place. I think the first election that I remember I did my ballot was probably, I don't know if it was one of the Obamas, but I know definitely I voted in the 2016, and I didn't want to see Trump be anywhere near it's a job he's not qualified for. Say what you will about politicians lying and whatever the hell it is, even W. Bush, who at the time seemed like the least qualified, he had been a failure in other offices before, and he's from a family of people that, exert control in all of that public service and intelligence services as well. So a lot of it I didn't really believe necessarily.
And he traded Sammy Sosa to the Cubs for nothing.
We would say in our recovery meetings, it's an outside issue. We're talking voting, not baseball. At the federal level, the act of voting just seems performative. There actually was a wrestling pay-per-view that they came up with where you got to vote for what the matches would be. And if there was ever an example of how much your vote really counts, like I'm sure they probably do actually tally some of the shit, but they're going to make the matches whatever they want them to be. It's wrestling. And so that's what kind of how I've always seen the federal elections. I do believe local elections and all that has more impact, especially when it comes to like issues and propositions, as well as whatever candidates and all that. And I've seen some level of it more up close with, I'm friends with comedian and Newark City Councilman who stepped down recently, Mike Bucci. And so I've gotten to see a little bit of what that looks like on a local level. And it's interesting to me. And then when I start thinking about it, it very much kind of mirrors just like, any industry where you get to see the local level, and then you can kind of start to get a sense of like what things mean on a state level. And you can only imagine when it gets to the major leagues, just the grade A levels of bullshit that are involved in being one of those players, and that you're not getting into that without corporate sponsorship and lots of vetting, and there's a lot more, I'm sure, that goes on behind the scenes. So
the good news is I'm sure those corporate donors want nothing in return.
Yeah, no doubt.
So it's only up. And I want to take issue with something you said, because you said it's WWE and it's, epic levels of bullshit. And I would say there's nobody more qualified than Donald Trump for those two things.
Yeah, if that's what you want in it, I would rather have the appearance of somebody who does that for a living and not is a TV personality and a career con man.
Even if they do it poorly for a living.
Yeah,
they're all career con men. I mean, that's the thing is like,
yeah, but
Obama was a major con, and so was George W. Bush. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Better. There's, even
of course, it's your different. Yeah, it's your different flavor of con man. You went. I mean, they just go back and forth, right? You go from George H.W. out of touch, old and uncool, and then you get Bill Clinton and his saxophone, and then everyone's sick of this
philandering thing. I got your point. I'm trying to
but
help you save
now I'm having
oxygen.
fun.
Our elections have probably been a joke since Ronald Reagan, because that was an actor turned.
You need to listen to Jimmy Carter speak. I think it's probably been fucked since they whacked
Probably
Kennedy.
wasn't alive, or didn't become alive until then, and didn't.
Can we do our next episode on the Woodrow Wilson administration?
No,
A lot there, dude.
wow, this is
Lots to unpack. Okay.
Get it all in now. I would just rather have somebody who, whatever the con is, just has it down a little better. What I would say is that Donald Trump definitely, I would say, mirrors the idiocy of our country more than anybody else.
I think a combination of Trump and Biden, like as one entity, is probably like the perfect thing. Like completely full of shit and completely out of it.
Yeah, maybe. So
about the electoral college, you brought it up earlier. We have the technology now to quickly and accurately count every vote, and we don't need the electoral college anymore. And I think that one person, one vote is a better system. And it made sense back in the old days when technology and communication was so poor to do it that way, but it just doesn't anymore. When you have the popular vote in real time along with the electoral votes, you don't need to have the electoral vote anymore. And then there's another aside. My friend Brian of Captain Three-Leg, he voted for his first time in his life in this last election, not for Biden, but against Trump. And not against Trump. He voted because he was so sick of like driving around seeing fuck Joe Biden flags and Trump flags. He's like, I cannot stand this anymore. I can't take 4 more years of this. So not only did he throw away his vote for that, it was like he wasn't even against Trump. It was against the people who like him. So
yeah,
that moved him so much to come out of a political coma his entire life just to vote against flags and stuff. So
I like the thought of that, a political coma.
I'm writing in Captain Three-Leg. That's a great name.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
They've been mentioned before. They're spooly.
Well, I like it. I'm not apologizing, David.
All right, we got Spooley's vote on that. So yeah, it's always just felt performative. It's to quell the masses and make them feel, as George Carlin called it, it's the illusion of choice, more so than actual choice. So all right,
like Devo said, freedom from choice is what we actually want. So
I just posted a quote too from Chuck Palahniuk. I don't have it on hand, but it was a really cool quote about how Big Brother isn't watching you. Big Brother, it rather is just putting on a nice show for you to keep your imagination satiated, so that you're not really of any threat because your imaginations are dulled. And I totally feel that. I mean, I'm watching MCU movies and wrestling and preoccupied with a lot of dumb shit. I'm not really that concerned about a lot of this stuff, and that's kind of part of the mechanism, I feel.
It's always been bread and circuses. You feed the masses all the distracting crap, and you can do whatever you want to them. Yeah. It's almost like they're roofing us. Yeah,
very much cultural.
They feed us all this shit, and then they fuck us in the ass.
Mm-hmm. So, and then in that case, I guess Donald Trump would be the most appropriate representation of date rape. But hey, doesn't mean I want it. You know,
it would be the most fantastic date rape ever, Dave.
I wouldn't.
Everyone would be talking about how fantastic the rape was.
It would be huge.
Yeah, exactly.
It would be tremendous.
It'd be tremendous.
I'd rather be date raped by Kamala. Okay. All right, moving on. Next topic. This one. It was actually on our list of topics that we had for the group, but wanted to give Andy a chance to talk about something that he would want to talk about. His topic, all that was on our list was memes. Topic of memes. So Andy, go ahead, take lead on this.
Yeah, I feel very strongly about memes, and I've said recently that the share button on social media was the worst thing that ever happened. What it did was it put comedy in the hands of very few people, and then everyone else would just like hit share and be like, oh, I have a personality now. They don't have to try to be funny or interesting at all now. It really was the death of social media, I think, because years ago, before memes in the current form exist, that people would try to share things about their lives, even if it was boring shit, like I woke up and had breakfast and blah, 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 went on a walk. At least then you were giving something of yourself. But meme culture and the share button has made it so nobody has to try at all anymore. I see the same shit reposted by multiple people every day, and everyone thinks, oh, I'm the smart guy. I found this first, and it's just all boring as fuck, and I don't like any of it. So
not a fan of memes.
I very rarely share memes. I sometimes make memes, but then they don't ever get shared, which is fine. But like, I post so much of myself every day, like real life experiences that I've gone through and done, and things that I've accomplished and things like that. And they will fall flat, and that's fine. I don't care about that at all. But then I see people with like meme pages and shit, and they'll just share the same shit that everyone else is doing, and they'll like get tons of shares and tons of interaction and shit, and they're not doing anything. You know, they're not cultivating anything, they're not creating anything, and I don't like it. So sure, I laughed at memes, and there's lots of great memes, but I think as a phenomenon in pop culture, it was a bad idea because it made people try a lot less. You know, that's what I think.
Speaks to that Chuck Palahniuk quote that I was just talking about. You know, this is the culture's idea of creativity through social media, and then on top of that, there are people that develop a voice with it. That I do know some people that have made popular meme pages that went viral and whatnot, and then they became kind of a thing, and then they got frustrated because they couldn't figure out how to monetize it. And it's like, yeah, because what you are is essentially like a social media graffiti artist, you know, and try being a popular graffiti artist and then figuring out a way to monetize that if that's what your goal is. A lot of them aren't, but some of them do manage to do so. But it's tricky. It's not a path that you go into because you're trying to make money. So, Jason, your thoughts on memes?
I don't really like memes very much. I don't like them at all, really. It's kind of like in high school, I used to say, you know, that people wouldn't have a sense of humor if it weren't for Saturday Night Live, because every Monday you would just hear people like doing Wayne's World jokes and sprockets. Oh, sprockets, yes, sprockets, let's dance, or whatever the fuck. It's really interesting how people are so willing to just kind of steal somebody else's idea and repeat it ad infinitum. And I say this knowing full well that as a kid, Dave mentions this a lot, Mike Sills and I walking to school every day, like parroting Kevin Meaney jokes. But that's good. I mean, yeah, I did.
And the movie Full Metal Jacket.
And the movie Full Metal Jacket, yes. But, see, it's kind of like, what's that show? Family Guy, where initially I found it pretty funny, but then it devolved into just kind of like endless, like millisecond long, like references to other shit, like in the middle of the episodes. And it's just, you know, it's like life, humor and culture and interesting thought is not all endless reference to something else. You know what I mean?
That was amazing. I hopefully wasn't too loud laughing. The Sprockets impersonation was on point.
Like, I'm pretty sure there's a Sprockets meme too out there.
I share Jason's absolute like disdain for people re-quoting Wayne's World, and it was this particular era where it was actually a very good cast of Saturday Night Live, but people would just repeat it. They'd do say swing a lot,
making copies.
The copy. I was exactly going to that, and none of that shit was funny. Like a lot, there was like Phil Hartman was there, and like nobody's quoting Phil Hartman. He's like gold every single time. Anyways, but yeah, I'm with you, Jason, on that stuff. And Beavis and Butthead at the time too. That really took off in that same era, and that was also substituting. It wasn't just substituting for humor; it was substituting for people's like actual personality content. They were just quoting that shit. And then first year of college, it was Forrest Gump, and it just like it goes on and on. I agree with him. Now on the meme thing, it's like anything else. It just depends on the quality of it, and it's not frequently. But if like one is funny, I'm not going to be like I laugh, but it doesn't count because it was a meme. You know, it's it's not high art, and I don't need to say that.
That sounds like a meme right there.
It's not high art. And some of your shit just trolling me and Nathan, like it's kind of like the meta meme thing that you're doing is also pretty good. My favorite meme is, how do you handle conversations with your friends who believe in conspiracies? And then the next panel says, I'm sorry, man, you were right. So I like that one. But for the most part, it is low art. And I have the one that says splish splash, your opinion is trash. And that's not even like a meme. That's just dumb. Anyways, I don't know. For once, I don't really have a strong opinion on it, but I do have a strong opinion on Jason's diatribe, and I enjoyed that very much.
You know, meme culture was already here a while ago, but where it became kind of dominant for a second was during the pandemic, because we were all stuck at home. A lot of people were stuck on their devices, and
it fucking worked.
Yeah, you
I had to
were working,
work.
but I mean, not, there were a lot of people that were stuck at home and on their devices and stuff. Because
Right.
I saw people who, they made some memes and that was that, but they ended up swelling. There's two guys that I remember his handle was memeing into the void. His name's Mike something, and he's a comic from LA, and he's really good at making memes. Shocker, he was very much into psychedelics, and in doing so, anybody who's done psychedelics, to any degree, would know that you kind of get locked into like an idea sometimes. So he would not just make one meme about, maybe a topic or whatever. He would make a series of them. For the one that comes to mind is when he was stuck on Jay Leno's "Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?" And he would then make a series of memes that all involved Leno or just an aspect of Leno of a seat. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? And it was just a flood of them. And then he had kind of a protege, somewhat of a guy. I'm forgetting his name too. These are good things that I forget their names, but his whole theme of majority of his memes are all surrounding aspiring stand-up comedy, meaning like it's not stand-up comedy in general, but literally open mic level to local showcase level comedy, because he's a local comedian in his area, and his memes are accurate and damn funny, but it's all he does are these memes. And I think he's on the spectrum of some kind, he's said. And my favorite parts actually during their ascent to internet stardom would be when they would take a break from the memeing because they were going through something real, and they would share some really like, "Hey guys, just wanted to let you know, thank you for the support, but been really going through it the last few days." I'm like, why couldn't you just put that into a meme?
That's what Charles Schultz did when he did Peanuts. He took his real life and threw it in a strip,
Exactly. Yeah.
He did that too in his memes.
Yeah.
That was his real life?
Yeah, like every aspect of the strip was his real life.
How did he last long without killing himself?
I don't know. He was a miserable guy. He was very unhappy. So.
Yeah, have you ever been to Santa Rosa? Any of you? They celebrate this guy. There's like peanut stuff everywhere. And I always found it to be the most depressing. Like I think it was like the prototype for Al Bundy, but without like any of the fun or joy. It's just Charlie Brown just couldn't win ever. He always lost at all times. Yeah. He was always down.
I was at a friend's house once with my wife at that point, and there was a 2,000 anthology of peanut strips that year, and I was bored, and I flipped through it, and just strip after strip, like the whole year. Like I didn't even realize it, but it was like nothing good ever happened to any character in any strip that entire fucking year. And then like I looked at that, and I looked back at like older shit. It was the same the entire time. Nothing good ever happened to anyone.
Well, I'll say this for memes. At least they tend to be more entertaining than Sunday newspaper cartoon strips.
Yeah.
In just the long run, because I used to be a fan of those, and those were droll and boring, and I still loved them. I didn't even think they were funny half the time, but I just enjoyed them. And then with memes, because there's definitely they get into there's stock popular pictures that like, for instance, somebody who became a meme in this last year was the Haktua girl, and she became kind of a phenomenon. Started with a video that went viral, and then the memes started coming out, for the most part, because it is just such a low form of creativity. To me, I'm not that bothered by them. I think the only time I was ever really bothered by it was when seeing these guys that were like getting disappointed that they were getting reshared, as you were saying. And I'm like, that's what people do. It's like if you share something, if it goes viral or whatnot, the best you can do to maintain some sense of authorship is to put a watermark on it, stating that this was your OC, as they like to say, your original content. But beyond that, once you make something, it's and you put it on the internet, it almost ceases to be yours. And memes again are just to me, it's just like internet graffiti. They're everywhere, and right. You like some, you don't like others. But for the most part, I just if it's funny to me, I don't care. I make mine throwaway. I remember I made some memes for the Melvins Facebook group. And I remember I've had some comments where like, whoever made this didn't do a very good job. I'm like, yeah, no shit. I'm like, I don't think too much of this. I wasn't sitting here trying to get all the details because I'm not going to spend that much time on a throwaway thought.
Do you think those are the same people who were like reading the Sunday comics and looking at Marmaduke and thinking like these guys didn't do a very good job with this?
Yeah, I would say the same type of personality that's focusing on the wrong thing. For some people, they get deep into this shit. There are ones that are done when if they're doing Photoshop or whatever, really well. I mean, our sponsor, our quote unquote sponsor, Chibson USA, he developed his own kind of style of meme that was an advertisement for fake guitar products, just satirical guitar products. And it was literally done just so he could teach himself Photoshop and just make jokes for music nerds, gear nerds more than music nerds. Like it's specific, very super niche.
Gear nerds and music nerds are two different people. There's people who care about gear who care very little about music,
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm saying. And again, to reiterate my point earlier, I'm not saying I dislike memes. I dislike that so many people have erased every bit about their personality and they share nothing of themselves to just share memes all day and that's it. That's what I'm upset. I'm not upset. That's what I find irritating because you don't have to share anything or create anything. And you could be a really popular guy on the internet just by hitting share and that's it, That to me it's lazy.
I have friends like that too, but yeah, it's their creative voting there, Andy. Just like you said, your attitude towards voting, that's their attitude. To me, they're just like street jokes, of the internet.
It's not specific just to memes too, because there are people like there's a Twitter quote unquote journalist named Aaron Rupar, and all he does is just retweet videos of other people's journalism. And then there's like news aggregation sites where they're not actually producing any content, they're just aggregating it and curating it. Right. But it's the same thing. Like you can look at something like Matt Drudge, the Drudge Report. It's the same thing as just sharing memes. You're just saying, I like these 10 memes and it's funny. And the same thing with news aggregators or people who retweet a bunch of crap. It's all kind of the same, like second tier, like fake creativity and fake content.
Word. And let's get Nate's point of view here.
Yes, please.
No Poetics Nathan states, memes are annoying social media bullshit that people use in place of talking to each other. Gotcha. A picture with a quick thought. Take that of opposing viewpoints. It's funny that No Poetics Nathan is poeticizing memes in his thoughts right there. So they're not all about opposing thoughts. Sometimes it's just talking shit.
I have another point. When my parents were younger and I was in the 80s and they would go to the bars, they would come back with like photocopied like hustler drawings and shit, and like homemade cartoon drawings of like people in dirty positions and shit like that. It occurred to me years ago that was like the early pre-internet version of like a meme where like they had like binders and books with those plastic sleeves. You'd stick them in and they had like a whole book of like pre-internet memes that existed back then that were just like hustler comics and shit traded back and forth, but also like hand-drawn poorly made ones that like existed by like people who were just drunks and shit. So did you see any of that in your childhood?
Maybe. My dad took me to a lot of bars, but he was more of a talking with other people guy. Kind of speaks to what Nate was just saying. Like if you were to ask my dad what a meme is, he'd be like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. It's like he gets on the internet very sparingly. He's aware of it. He's on it sometimes, but he doesn't have any of his own social media online. He uses my stepmom's Facebook page if he wants to stalk anybody.
I just wondered if that was like a regional thing that only happened around here or during.
I'm sure it happened elsewhere.
Yeah, my dad was more of a show his actual genitalia to people.
Yeah, that we've covered that.
That was my stepdad. Yeah, I guess there's a pattern my mom's taste in men.
Yeah. But I mean, we all had the classic. It's not myth, but the classic fact of there would always be old porn in the woods, in some old trailer. I do remember going to my friend David Nodden when I first moved to Newark. They had a small camper that he would go kick it in or whatever at the side of the house, and he brought us over there, and that's where they had all these fucking rancid, old dirty magazines and shit. And yeah, we'd see the titties and all that, but then we'd look at the cartoons.
Right.
We're more drawn to cartoons and humor than we are to like, actual, nude people.
The cartoons in Playboy are infinitely better than the cartoons in the New Yorker.
A lot of their humor was, they also had, jokes. They would have a whole page of jokes too.
Right.
So, Jason, any more closing thoughts on memes?
No, not really.
No, not really. They're not much of an art form, are they, Art Lord?
Boo on memes. I mean,
No.
sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're clever. I like a good surreal meme that doesn't have any actual meaning, that just kind of is there to be strange, But
I've made good. Well, I don't know. They're not always memes, but I have to say, after the introduction of AI to our show, I've had a lot of fun throwing in some words that are said during the episode and seeing what the AI image generator comes up with, because there's some real dumb shit that comes up, and I love it. So, all right, well, that's memes. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for picking that out of our little topics there. And now moving on to our song, last but not least. And again, it's an Andy selection. This one, I was looking forward to this because, again, Andy's a well-versed human in music of all varieties. And when I told him, I said, you pick a song, and he asked, does it need to be popular? Does it need to be this, that, and the other? I said, it's just, whatever song. We usually try to have a video that accompanies it, so we have something visual to talk about. And boy, did he pick a good one. He picked, I didn't even know this was the name of the group, but I knew the song. He picked the Greg Kihn Band's hit song Jeopardy from the year 1983. And if you never heard the song, you probably heard Weird Al's parody. But yeah, so Andy, go ahead and take point on Jeopardy here.
Well, I've always been a big fan of the Greg Kihn Band, and I've always said that he was the blue-collar songsmith that we as Americans deserved, but we ended up with Springsteen instead, unfortunately. All of his music is pretty straightforward rock type stuff, but this one's a little more keyboard oriented. And I was telling Dave earlier, I grew up in a house without music. We didn't listen to the radio or anything. My parents didn't own a stereo. There was no records around or anything. But my introduction to music was the music video. And there was a hour-long block, I think it was an hour, on Friday nights called Friday Night Videos. And in the Midwest, we didn't have MTV. So it was through that I got an interest in music, because of the visual element of it. But Jeopardy was a very early music video I saw, along with like ZZ Top and Michael Jackson and stuff like that, But the video itself is great because it as a kid, I don't know how old I was in '83, probably 7, I guess. And it showed a depiction of marriage being a death sentence, basically. That's a very heavy subject for a kid, But aside from that, the song itself is just, it's a banger. It's super catchy. And it only got to number 2. And it was never able to beat out Michael Jackson. But his other big hit was the Breakup Song, which is a song you won't know by the title, but it's like, if you listen to it, you'll know the song instantly. So, but yeah, I always liked them, and it's a good video. I thought it was creative. It had a lot of practical effects in it, and I think that the Weird Al cover of it was very musically faithful. He took a different spin on it. I think it was just as good, actually.
Jason?
This video is fantastic. I never saw it before. I really love the video, especially when he's standing at the altar and turns around and sees all of the handcuffs from man to woman, and then it gets weirder because their hands are like together.
Yeah,
and then
fused
there's
together.
Weird umbilicus connecting two people, and it's just throbbing. Fucking amazing. It was so good. And then the tentacle monster grabs him at the end. It's amazing. Love that shit. So good. Now the song, it's really weird because of course I only ever heard Weird Al's version, and I heard the original later. But so I mean, as far as I knew, Weird Al did an original song, at the time. But listening to the original song now, it strikes me, it's one of those we've talked in private about it before, songs that just kind of start and then go and don't really change and then end, and how good and like satisfying that can be. And this is like one of those songs where it just kind of like it starts and then it goes, and it's like they didn't need to do much to augment it throughout the entire song because it was just such a good groove. Really fantastic.
Sweet. Spoolie.
I agree with Andy on the breakup song, and I think that was my first reaction because I like this song obviously, but a breakup song is just a really perfect pop rock song. Yeah, so the same thing with Jason. I'd never really heard this because I mostly listened to Weird Al more than any actual music as a child. So when I heard this version was when I worked at Der Wiener Schnitzel in Newark, and the owner of the Wiener Schnitzel, he owned a bunch of delis and stuff. And I guess what he did before that is he managed this guitar player named Jimmy Lyons, who was Tina Turner's guitar player, and somehow he knew Greg Kihn. So he had the best of Greg Kihn on, and he had a 1-disc player, and it was just all the time was just the best of Greg Kihn. And so I am like, hey, do you have any other music? And so he calls Greg Kihn and tells him that I hate his music. Just like, that was unnecessary. I said the breakup song's awesome. And I think, Dave, he was also a local DJ for many years here in San Francisco on KFOG.
That's why his name sounded familiar.
Yeah, same dude. Yeah, he was a local DJ for a long time until KFOG went away. So up until maybe a couple years ago, he was a local DJ. But I agree with Jason in the video, and I love the term throbbing umbilicus. Because I was like, what is that connecting those two? I do like how it's like it paints this just like horrible picture of like how being married will be the death of you, and then he escapes it and he realizes she escapes it, so they celebrate escaping death by doing some serious drunk driving. That's awesome.
That was a separate bride.
Oh.
I'll get to that. Let me read Nate's summary of the video here. So No Poetics Nate said, Greg Kihn's song is great. Classic early 80s song. One of the few instances where Weird Al topped the original. So the three of you are all Weird Al heads. I'm kind of in Andy's boat where I heard the original first. 7 years old, for whatever reason, heard a lot of pop music, so much so that I got the cassette called Chart Action 83, which is where this song is featured heavily on. If I've heard the breakup song, I don't know it by the title, so I'll have to go back and...
Yeah, 100% you've heard it.
I probably have.
I didn't know it was called that until many years after listening to it 700 times at Wiener Schnitzel.
Got it. But I do know Jeopardy. The title is in the song quite often. I also liked the riff because it was haunting. There was this song and Golden Earrings Twilight Zone that I thought were kind of like two songs that were kind of similar at the time, and they're both on that cassette. They're both 1983 hits, but they were pop songs with a strange haunting vibe. The video, though, I forgot about, and I probably watched it on Friday Night Videos and early MTV, but seeing it today, it's so funny that it has like an 80s porn aesthetic in terms of the quality of the video. And
it really does.
The Weird Al parody act, even though it has a low budget, clearly had a better budget than the original video. Yeah, and it's all a marriage thing, and then the things that you kind of pointed out, it starts with he's about to get married, and he's clearly got like what I would call the cocaine sweats, because this video clearly is inspired by cocaine. And low budget, because a lot of the budget probably had to be spent on having a bowl of cocaine somewhere at all times. But he sees one old married couple that they're handcuffed together, and then the next couple that he looks at, their hands are fused together, and then the last one is what you called I took it as like a connecting flesh colostomy bag of some kind that was connecting them. But yeah, it's some kind of like a very low budget flesh umbilical connection between the two. Some of my favorite parts were when they shoot back, you kind of miss it, when they shoot back to Greg with the bride to be and the priest that's marrying him, and the priest is asking where the ring is, but he does so by doing this. Like he's like trying to visually say like, hey, where's the ring? But instead he's just making what's the classic hand gesture for fucking. And then as the whole wedding party turns into, I guess, some level of zombie or whatever. Greg Kihn's way of battling through is grabbing a piece of wood and air guitaring to all of the zombies, as if not a real guitar. I guess they couldn't get a real guitar for the budget. He had to grab a piece of wood and do what 5-year-olds do with tennis rackets and whatever, and pretend that he's playing guitar to fight off all the zombie wedding party. And he does. And then, yes, then this paper mache version of John Carpenter's The Thing comes from somewhere and tries to take him away. And then the whole thing it culminates. He ends up like escaping with the bride from this nightmare outside. And then it becomes the Zapruder film of the JFK assassination. Where he runs outside and the whole film it's like the whole video should have been in this film quality, because it looked better. And he goes outside, and then they cut to what back to the porn tone. You see the film being projected somewhere, and it's being watched by 2 married corpses that you can only assume is the future of whatever this marriage is. I don't know how corpses put on a film and watch it, to death, and then he snaps out of it, and he's back. This is all in his imagination before the marriage, and he decides, fuck this, I'm out. And he bounces so he can go party somewhere, and he hops into a car, and across the street at a neighboring church comes out a bride-to-be who's also ditching her wedding, and they decide, hey, let's, he just kind of gives her a wink or whatever, a smile, and she's like, oh yeah, this is the guy, and they decide to bounce together. And meanwhile, he then pops a bottle of champagne. Yeah, like you see it project now, and then the license plate, lips. That's the whatever fucking lips is.
Why was it lips?
Yeah, I don't even. It was definitely a Coke inspired. Whatever. I think a meme is more creative than some of the aspects of the video, but it's a fun video.
Do you think that I forget the guy's name, which is kind of embarrassing because even I should know his name, but the guy who made Beetlejuice, because they had a very similar aesthetic.
Tim Burton.
Yeah, Tim Burton. They had a very similar aesthetic with the bride and groom outfit disintegrating into skeletons. Different meaning, but it was the same aesthetic.
I mean, this predates Tim Burton having anything to do with anything, but
I'm basically saying legendary director Tim Burton stole his idea from Greg Kihn band's video.
From what I understand, he's stolen from other people. But I would say creatively, for what the budget was and all that stuff, this is a very imaginative video for what it is, and especially
it got played a lot too. I think.
Yeah, especially for early in video culture. Remembering now that Spoolie kind of pointed out, Greg Kihn used to DJ around here, and how he's one person away at a Wiener Schnitzel from Greg Kihn himself. I don't think it would be that hard to get in touch with Greg Kihn in some form. And Andy was, when he mentioned this, one of the things he followed up with was, "Oh my God, Greg Kihn is in the Weird Al parody. His car and the bride-to-be are the car that Weird Al escapes at the end of his Jeopardy
driver." Yeah.
So that's a rare case of seeing the target of a parody in the same video with the parody. So
we should actually try to get in contact with him and just try and break down the video, like almost like a DVD extra, like break down the video with him.
Or we could leave him alone. Yeah.
I like my
One
first
of the
idea.
things I noticed about Weird Al's video is that while the subject was completely different, there is a scene in that video where he pulled a piece of the set off and broke it off in the exact same way that the fucking Greg did in his video. So, like, he grabbed onto the pew and broke it off, and Al did that too. But it was like that was the only thing that was the same, and it's strange that he chose that thing, and that was it.
You should have had a monster come out of something too.
Yeah, he should have. So
yeah, that would have been.
Cool. You should get a hold of Weird Al, get him on here, and we should break down that video. And you can give him that suggestion, or we could leave him alone.
Yeah, we could leave him alone too. But he'd be harder to get in touch with. That's the irony that it would be
Exactly.
harder to get in touch with Weird Al than get Greg Kihn.
I think that Greg Kihn is a normal blue collar guy who spoke to Americans, I think, and ended up everybody threw all their support behind Bruce, and Bruce isn't a normal blue collar guy at all. He's not a approachable guy now, or I don't think he was back then. So,
yeah.
But Greg seems like a normal dude,
Yeah, the funny thing about Greg Kihn, when I saw him, I'm like, who does he look so familiar? And I'm like, oh yeah, this is like if Beau Bridges became a kind of a pop rock star. If you know the actor Beau Bridges, brother of Jeff Bridges, he's a good actor. I'm not knocking him. I see Fabulous Baker Boys. You know, that was probably one of his more prominent movies, but did a good job playing Earl's dad on My Name is Earl. And he's been in a lot of stuff. I forget about all the stuff he's been in. But if you look at Beau Bridges and Greg Kihn, at that time, they look like they would be more related than Jeff Bridges and Beau Bridges.
And oddly, a little bit of Jim Belushi.
Well, more of the vibe. I don't think he looks like Jim Belushi.
No, I'm just saying if you're talking about like your second tier, like lower quality brother, actor, comedian, like it's odd that it also kind of has the hair and kind of the general aesthetic of Jim Belushi also.
Or any of the Murray brothers. You got a lot of Murray brothers there. Joel Murray, John Murray, Brian Doyle Murray. You know, probably more Joel Murray though. He was the lead in One Crazy Summer, if you remember.
Oh yeah, good movie.
Yeah. He's been in some other stuff too more recently. He works a lot with Bobcat Goldthwait. We lost Andy. I don't know what. Oh, there he is. He's back. Cool. Were you trying to escape a wedding?
Yeah, that's what I was doing. I already did that once. So
all right. So I think did we say everything that needed to be said?
They don't write them like that anymore, Dave. Trust me.
No, they sure don't.
He definitely, Greg Kihn, definitely against relationships. You know, he's like a stay freewheeling. Don't get tied down. Don't get married. You know, just kick it with the boys, make some songs, and hook up randomly.
I don't think I really listened to the lyrics of Jeopardy to see if they lined up with the subject matter.
The lyrics don't really say that much. There's not a lot of detail in the lyrics. So I think whoever came up with the video concept really kind of had their own ideas about where they could take it. They kind of really expanded on the lyrics because the lyrics are pretty simple.
I'm only going on the chorus. Our love's in jeopardy.
Baby.
Yeah, baby.
Right, which is super vague. No, I agree with Art Lord.
Yeah. But as far as the lyrics, I didn't dive deeply into specifics of the verses.
It's hard to because the groove is so fucking hard that you don't really do the words, you know.
Good jam. Cool. All right. Well, you know what? Our podcast isn't in jeopardy, so that's good. We should have No Poetics Nathan back next time, but also want to wish his wife Carrie a happy birthday because I believe part of this was all her birthday week kind of thing, and she's a supporter of the show, and we're very grateful that she lends us her husband once every 2 weeks to record an episode and let him have his little time in his room with us. So I want to thank her as well. And I want to thank everybody here. Another good episode here, another good time. Meaningful Times with Friends. Great job, guys. Thank you, Andy, for being an awesome special guest and substitution friend for us. Friend of the show. Always. Spoolie D, Jason the Art Lord. I've been Mean Dave. Hope you enjoyed this episode. This one's a little more subdued, if you notice. We, because we're all I'm in quieter quarters. I don't know about everybody else. I'm pretty sure Spoolie's in some awkward scenario wherever he's at.
I'm just like basically waiting till I get the knock at the door. We're screaming housekeeping and get the F out because I'm over time.
All right. Well, yeah, we're done. We're good. Good job, guys. We'll see you next time. Adios. Arrivederci. And don't get married. Break up.
Kind of a big milestone. It's kind of humbling when something like this shows up in the mail, but this is our plaque for passing 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. It means a lot when I go on YouTube and I see like a successful YouTuber in their video and they're in their studio and they got one of these in the background. You know, I'm like, wow, look at how successful they are. You know, I'd like to feel that success and I'd like to be rewarded for my efforts. So I did what any normal person would do, spend about 65 bucks on eBay, and I picked up one of these things and they personalized it and made it out to Chibson USA. When people see this, they see this and they think success. They're like, this guy's successful, and that's what I want. In reality, we have about like 4,500 subscribers on YouTube, but now we got one of these. When this showed up and I unboxed it and I was staring at it, I can't help but feel like I earned it a little bit. I know I paid for it, but I feel like I earned it. I feel like I did the work. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, you might as well. Let's get up to 5,000.